Chapter 3. The Divorce That Led to the Pandora's Box of My Femininity. My divorce from my first Danish husband in 2010 became a catalyst for fully finding my balance, and for more than a decade with research and geekery, ending up with a theory, a couple of laws, and 6 hypotheses, which later created an algorithm and tools for all you are reading in this book, where we are able to quantify the intellect of emotions and the operational intellect of humanitarian talents, and thus combine and activate our accessible abilities, our combined consciousness, our dynamic intuition and organic instincts. Here we enter what I keep writing about all the time. There is no right or wrong, but only the line between those two concepts. I had found my calling in life. Our marriage ended very sadly for everyone. We both did what we could, based on the programs we came from and brought along. Some of us evolve rapidly and others develop more slowly. This is often one of the reasons why many divorces occur. To protect his and our children's privacy, that storytelling doesn't get much longer. Maybe one day the children will want to write a book about that chapter with me. It'll certainly be an inspiring story for many young people from their generation. But back then, in 2010, I again lacked the kind of power that my feminine side gives me. Not to say more and actually implement setting a demarcation, and to go for what I truly and sincerely wanted for several years, my freedom back and peace for my children. This was something I learned from our divorce, where again and again he forced me to learn to speak up and to hold on to myself, and each time he activated a small part I had turned off and put on a shelf to be a wife and a mother, self-love. After a long time under pressure, I accomplished what I thought was good for me and the children. Again, the dualities that meet each other and reinforce each other. If they cannot agree in their disagreement, then separation is the solution, as if both reject the other, it's like 2 minuses in a magnet. I am grateful that I had the strength and learned what I needed to create the amazing life we ended up having subsequently. So a big, loving thank you to him too, because he taught me that I should not only have empathy and drive for others, but actually take responsibility for what I also want, by pushing me and my limits in a way that I had to do what was actually required of me in order to get my freedom and the best for the children, even if it was to say no and move away completely. A single mother, and then what? A wild and violent chapter of 13 years ended, and a new life started. Briefly, about the 13 years. Madness, a roller coaster of love, betrayal, happiness, constant changes, goals, loneliness, twosomeness with loneliness, self-discovery, self-knowledge, lost freedom, the gift of life being my children. What imbalance within the emotional world can cause is no small matter. How love can end in such hatred when one of the parties seeks freedom, the freedom that the other pole assumes automatically. I ended up as a single mother by choice of the children, and for the first time I could feel myself again. I could hear the birds and see the trees. I was able to enjoy the children and my peace. Imagine being alone and not feeling lonely anymore. The presence of my children has been my lifeline and my life-saving by their mere presence. They have been the greatest task of my life and the teachers of my life. Their courage, intelligence, the way they deal with life and love are unique. Their way of being in life is one of the reasons why I write and am a happy person. I work, write, and help others in honor of you, my beloved children, and this book is written in our spirit, and for all that you have helped me with. Thank you. I am convinced that this is a very special relationship that the three of us have here, and not every parent or child gets to experience that kind of love. I do not have that kind of relationship with my parents, nor do I know anyone else who does. And no, it's not because we have been through a hard time together. Because in today's Denmark, many of us have tried to get divorced or break up with all the dramas, chaos, wounds, and experiences that divorce entails. My divorce lasted from 2010 until October 2012, where I only then got my divorce papers from the court. Back then, digital divorce didn't exist and one could not just divorce as you do today. After several years with about 25 lawsuits and a debt that for me ended in personal bankruptcy, I stood as a free person again, at the age of 36 with 2 children aged 11 and 9 respectively. I had been conscious about and knew since 2008 what would happen if I chose to leave, or if I completed my desired divorce, so the result didn't come as a shock. During the divorce, I experienced the worst and the best of everything and everyone. I lost people and chose to leave friends myself, so as not to put them in a dilemma or because it didn't feel right anymore. I managed to fall in love in another crazy love life in the divorce process, the designer and player who wanted a family. He became my salvation from my marriage, but also the reason why I hit rock bottom and chose to change my life 180 degrees. I managed to get engaged and to walk away from it. He was just a repetition of what I was trying to walk away from in another coat. I had a near-death experience in Paris with a violent attack that lasted several hours. I came back to Denmark with several broken ribs, a smashed face and hips. I got to see sides of people I never thought possible. I experienced my own strength, inner power, self-knowledge, self-reflection, a power and a joy without equal, despite what was happening around me. Nothing knocked me over. I ended up with feelings of happiness, no matter what bad things happened around me or with me. Something I didn't realize I could or had, at least not at all after the 13-year marriage when I didn't exist. Would I rather be without any of it? Never. When Till Death Do Us Part becomes a reality. Paris, 2011. It took me 2 whole years to find the strength, the serenity, and the inclusiveness for being able to take the consequences of leaving my first marriage. A crush helped me make the final decision. I was willing to do anything to move forward. The challenge was that I wasn't acclimatized, and my energy and consciousness was still part of the long-term marriage I'd left behind. I hadn't found myself again, and my thought form was not my consciously self-chosen. I had gotten myself into a real mess. After some stormy months of divorce litigation and a power struggle between 2 very jealous and patriarchal Danish men, I had to admit that I needed a break from everything and everyone. I made a plan. I had wanted a trip to the Camino for a long time. The court cases and the high level of conflict with my ex ran their course. The boyfriend at that time was sent to Paris with pleasure, so I could go there and hand over his ring to him. He had proposed to me. Then I wanted to move on to Spain to walk the Camino. I ended up driving to Paris with his mother and sister, which was a perfect fit. Then there was someone who could be there for him if necessary. What I didn't know was what was in store right in front of me. We arrived in Paris in the afternoon and went to a bar with his sister. They started out hardcore drinking alcohol. I went into shock. He was an alcoholic in rehab, which, incidentally, I had only found out long after I got to know him. The cheerful arrival in Paris meant nothing to me because I was about to move on. It wasn't my responsibility, and it was his life. We ended up in town that night with his sister. He ended up taking us to a strip club, and the line was totally crossed when he started smoking or taking some form of drugs. I left the place and tried to find my hotel. I didn't know what the name of the hotel was or where it was. The time I spent finding the hotel gave me a little peace and a little overview. Actually, I hadn't yet unpacked when we went straight to the bar and beyond. All my things were in the room, and my car was parked in front. I chose to wait for him, fully clothed, in the room. I'd hand over my ring to him and then sleep in my own room so I could leave for the Camino in the morning. He came in, and the first thing he asked was, "Where have you been and why are you wearing clothes?" I put my ring on the bed and said that it was all over. As I was leaving the room, he grabbed me and asked again, "Where have you been and who have you been with?" I jokingly replied, "In the hotel room upstairs." After that, I can remember only one thing, and that was his fist in my face and me on the floor, where I was beaten with fists and kicked in all places from the top to the bottom of my body. At some point, the blows didn't hurt anymore, and suddenly I could see myself from above. I could see him in action. I could see myself lying there. I can remember everything in small detail, even though I was unconscious. The attack went on for several hours, while I was unconscious and watching it all from the outside. He even went to the bathroom at one point, emptied my toiletry bag, threw my Chanel perfume into the bathtub. He also dragged me out into the hallway, took all my things and threw them on my unconscious body. He opened my bags and poured everything on me while I lay in the hallway. Milk, food, and juice were poured on me and my things. My phone and my computer he stepped on while he kicked and punched me. Both employees and hotel guests saw what happened and afterwards testified to the French police. They thought I was dead and that he was beating up a corpse. The police report said that everyone had received emergency assistance as they thought I was dead. Whether I was unconscious or dead, I know I stood next to my body and saw everything in little detail. There are many theories about what the brain does in such crisis situations, but there are just as many theories that we have a soul, and even scientists have had near-death experiences, or have come back from being clinically dead for a short time, having an inexplicable experience from the time they were dead. Either way, it's my inexplicable story. But the thought-provoking thing and the reason for the details is, where do I know it from, as I was unconscious? Where do I know all the details from? The mysteries of life are magical. After a long time out in the hallway, dead or unconscious and all alone, with all my things scattered over me, he came out of the room again after a period of reflection, perhaps because he saw that others had seen him. He pulled me back in by grabbing my feet. He took all the things and threw them back into the room. Then came the seriousness or last chance of survival, when he tried to squeeze my lifeless body under the bed. The bed legs were getting in the way of him pushing me all the way under the bed, so he started kicking me in my ribs to get me pressed under the bed. Something happened which I cannot explain, describe, or retell correctly, but something or someone asked me a question. It is up to you whether you want to return to life. It's okay, and it is your choice if you choose to leave. But your children need you. I remember that it didn't take me even 1 second for the choice to be made. I was back in my body with the greatest pain everywhere, and no longer a spectator of the madness. I could feel my body and everything it had been exposed to. I was told to tell him to stop for the sake of the children. I do not know yet how I could speak and how I got back, but the moment I spoke, he stopped immediately. He looked at me and was relieved that I wasn't dead, pulled me away from under the bed, lifted me up, and threw me against the wall, where I hit my face and jaw. There was blood splattering out of my mouth as I hit the wall, slid down, and collapsed. At the same moment, police and paramedics arrived. He was taken to the police station, and I was hospitalized. Apparently, I told the police on the way to the ambulance that I wasn't going to file a case against him, and that they should let him go. But I wasn't myself and can actually not remember. In the end, he stole my car, my passport, and my credit cards, after which he fled the country. When I came to consciousness at the hospital, I was wearing only a shirt and pants. Couldn't remember any number and was missing all my identity cards. I insisted on checking myself out. At the hospital, they found some shoes and a jacket of a deceased person for me. I couldn't quite walk and everything was blurry. I saw everything double, couldn't breathe properly, so I grabbed the walls and everything I could to be able to get out. I clearly remember thinking, I just have to get myself back to Denmark for my children, and nothing else. I looked up to heaven and said, if something intelligent is between heaven and earth, help me. I looked down again, and there was his mother and sister standing right in front of me. They told me that he'd run away with my car, and all that was important for being able to get back. We went back to the hotel, and the first comment his mother made was, well, why would you challenge a drunk man by giving him his ring back? She blamed me. It was probably the most unsympathetic experience of my almost 47-year life. And you know what? She was a psychotherapist. What the story lacks here is that she was divorced from a man who, over the years, had beaten her and my ex-boyfriend, who I was trying to break up with. The father was a successful businessman, an alcoholic, and married to someone from the East, I think. I remember looking at her, saying a few things, picking up the phone, and calling him and getting him to come back to Paris to drop off my things in my car and get me back to Denmark in exchange for not reporting him to the authorities. Here, you should remember that I was in survival mode, and if you haven't been shocked yet, it's probably coming now. He came back, and we stayed at the hotel the next day. I knew I needed medical attention, and they knew that too, the way I looked. I drove back to Denmark with him, the mother, and the sister. And despite everything that had happened, they planned a family trip sightseeing in Germany along the way, while I was only half alive in the back of the car. We arrived at my house in Denmark, and they ran in to remove all his papers and things so I couldn't track him down. No more driving me to the hospital or providing help. He fled Denmark afterwards, and I reported him to the police in Denmark when I was sane again. My friends came and checked me into hospital. There I spent many days in intensive care, with broken ribs, a concussion, injuries in the neck, hip injuries, fracture of the jaw and broken teeth, smashed lower lip and eye. Did I understand? Nothing. The extreme episode awakened me and my curiosity back to life. Everything I was afraid of was gone. I had the courage for life and was not going to let a wild divorce and the violent assault control me, who I was, or become my storytelling about me and my identity. I knew who I was and what I was capable of, but apparently I was missing something, or was programmed for something that had made me where I was. I saw an opportunity for a great change and found the courage to walk the final steps against a dynasty of culturally outdated religious thought forms. But then it appeared on the dashboard as an incomprehensible question. Well, they were Danes, the one highly educated with a high position, the other one a designer with success and living a jet-setter life. I had chosen not to go after men of the same nationality or culture as my old culture, in order not to lose my freedom or end up in a male-dominated relationship. And right here, everything gets very exciting, because in the following years of my single life, I actually met some Danish men who had been brought up having a very male-dominated conviction, so that sexuality and taboos shone through their sexuality and professional behavior, all being Danes. My conclusion to all this is, we are unconsciously influenced by the old cultural and religious thought forms on several levels. Each of us comes with our beliefs as a result of our nationalities, experiences, and our family's cultural patterns, which unconsciously govern us, the way we think, feel, and act, until we ourselves actively and consciously detach ourselves from them. Then we can feel, sense, think, and act responsibly and independently. Even if we think that now we have everything under control, there may be another layer just below in the unconscious that we do not have control of. In addition, the lack of teaching and knowledge about our emotional intelligence leaves us in a world where we can only half navigate. If this happens in today's Denmark, then imagine what happens in other countries that are not as developed and free-thinking as we are in Denmark. I don't write about the Paris incident in such detail because I need to tell the story or because I want to be identified with it. It was just a bump on the way in my life that I learned a lot from. I write about it because it shows a great mistake in the great system, our collective consciousness, which we must focus on in order to change, no matter where we come from and live. I do not think and do not believe that men are evil. I also didn't stop searching for love and never wanted to blame men. Nor do I deny the challenge we have worldwide of oppressed women and a male-dominated world. But I do believe that we are moving towards newer and better times with greater inner wisdom and more intelligent ways of developing. We are on our way to understanding ourselves as a man and woman from higher perspectives, opening up Pandora's box, and thus quietly freeing ourselves from the ancient cultural heritage that has created a rift and unequal beliefs between men and women. I believe that our evolution is peaking right now at a great speed, and that we must find a bridge between men and women that is balanced, equal, and must be based on our abilities and what we can do as human beings. We are a generation of many children of divorce and divorced couples with completely different problems than our parents. Our education or society has given us tools or knowledge to navigate. There are as many kinds of relationships as there are colors. The reason why I tell you about history is to prove that we are created to comprehend and handle a lot. There is no one who comes to know me who is not overwhelmed by how I have come through my life without being damaged, and now live the life I do. But the truth is that I am not unique. There are many, many like me, and we are all created with the same abilities. It's about how much we are developed, what we focus on developing, and what we believe in. Our beliefs are everything. If I believed that it was my fault and I blamed myself instead of saying, okay, it's time to learn again, then there'll be failures in the system. Or if I believed in some of the old thought forms and beliefs about the roles of men or women, instead of thinking that no one has the right to take my freedom in this way again, or to cross the line as he did, and thus considered the episode a random system error or failure, a system in need of updating. If we get stuck in an emotion, for example failure, which has the effect of phasing out, then we go into self-destruction mode. This is about balancing in all our emotions in order to get through the hard times in life that undoubtedly develop us at a higher level. Many people think and say, well, was your ex-boyfriend a Dane? Yes, a young Danish man in his early 30s, and his family on the surface even seemed to be doing very well financially. They were not religious, but his father had been drinking and beating the whole family. In our family, we've read a lot about psychopathy, among other things. My daughter wrote her graduation thesis about it, and my husband knows a lot about it too, as we have all unfortunately been through it in some of our old relationships. Through? Yes, that's how it felt, like a truck running over you back and forth many times. To me, it is life-threatening or quality of life-threatening to be around a psychopath or people with similar diagnoses. We are not going to play with the theories of psychology here, but just superficially get through it as a narrative. If you need knowledge on the subject, find the relevant books or people with professional skills. I have known leaders, psychologists, or men having been married to a psychopath, so there are no taboos or assumptions. It can happen to anyone. Psychopaths are very skilled in controlling. We have known both female and male psychopaths who show the kind of failure in their system in a crisis state when they cannot get their will and can control no more. When things change into a condition they do not like and have not chosen for themselves. And yes, many of us have the behaviors and traits, but we are talking about cases that are not a normal condition for a person, thankfully. We cannot go around calling all the controlling and manipulative people psychopaths. A psychopath doesn't stop, goes after your family and friends, starts conflicts and fires around you constantly, telling you that you yourself are responsible for those, not them. You can count on the justice system to become your best friend, as you'll become a full-time litigant. If you have children with a psychopath, it gives you 3 choices. Take the children and run. Stay and cooperate with their control in a conflict relationship with very unhealthy relationships between everyone, or let go of the children 100% to give them the best conditions for survival. They will be the weak link in your relationship that will always be used. It's about giving children the freedom not to be the tool of a psychopath. Then you have to lick the wounds later. A conflict with a psychopath is not about meeting in the middle in duality, but about rejecting and finding another system and being part of it. Finding new relationships as new circumstances and taking experiences to one's own advantage, instead of getting stuck in a feeling. Psychopaths' strategy of control can often contribute to creating taboos where you cannot survive socially or inside you. They taboo you with all the things you shouldn't do and are not good at. Guilt can be their weapon. It sounds almost like a religious cult, but as written at the beginning of the book, taboos are the greatest tools we humans resort to when we lose control or feel threatened in relation to our beliefs and faiths, due to a lack of knowledge, or simply because we need to remember to develop ourselves consciously, as everything is constantly in development and change. Taboos are caused by our lacking ability to handle our emotional intelligence, combined with the fact-based and operational intelligence. Taboos create and are caused by, for instance, bad conscience, guilt, shame, wrong version of you or others, reproach, self-blame, oppression, powerlessness, control, the need to be dominant, a lack of integration ability, a lack of understanding, a lack of respect that can be caused by a negative ego or bad self-esteem, a lack of knowledge or lack of development, a lack of empathy. Well, you cannot expect them to do anything else, as they cannot feel their emotions in the same way as you, and their EQ is very low, if at all existing. After all, it's all about our emotions. But one thing is certain. You cannot explain for yourself what happens in such a relationship and why you end up in such a relationship. It'll take time to recognize a psychopath, relate to a psychopath, learn how to deal with a psychopath, understand yourself in relation to a psychopath, and move on from a psychopath, or just get away from one, if at all possible. We've had professionals who have told us that we are dealing with a psychopath, and that it takes time to stabilize and balance life after meeting such a person. But I can promise you that it can be done, and that even this kind of trauma and violent life event can be turned to our advantage and used for our development to achieve success in life. The more you are developed and the more of your abilities you use consciously, the more you move towards one of your opposite poles at the outer edges. Thus, if we are to learn to balance, for example with our anger, we must learn the value of anger from 0 to 10, so that we fully know all its energetic power and effect. So it may be that it isn't about feeling much anger and being happy, but to get there, you need to catch up with the knowledge and experience that come with your anger abilities from 0 to 10. Then your strategic brain can create a way for you to deal with yours and that of others, comprehend it, integrate with it, without it affecting you and you compromising it. Anger is a part of you, will always be there, be part of your compass for when it is needed, but it shouldn't be the dominant and predominant. There must be room for all the other 4 basic emotions as well. We've demonstrated that they are part of our nature and always present. It's about what we are conscious of and what we use consciously depending on who we are, where we are in our development, and what we want in life. I have not only experienced hard things in my life, but have also had an enriched and love-filled life with lots of successes. I've turned every failure and trauma into small success steps towards the next greater success. As a woman, mother, leader, and entrepreneur, I've used all the experiences of my life to find a way we can lead, create, be parents, or rather, be human beings. A way in which our faith, family, and cultural beliefs not only govern our original signature, our abilities found in unconscious that we don't know about yet. A way of being curious in life to get closer and closer to our original intelligence, or the abilities we have not yet developed. A way in which men and women, managers, employees, entrepreneurs, and customers can move with ease with their wholeness and balance. A way of using all of us as human beings, all of our combined intelligence, combined consciousness, in the form of our emotional and operational intellectual personal management. This is not about men being the one thing or women being the other, but 1 + 1 = 2. Women and men are essential and created equal, with the abilities needed to be able to survive, live, and be happy. At a time, we shall stop pointing at each other and believing that it is either men's world or women's time. It is our time, and this time we need to remember each other and help each other move forward. To me, we also have a generation of men who need help with their gender identity, if it is not to come from what they have learned from school, religion, or culture. The divorced man who must learn to be a contemporary man, and who doesn't have a role description based on the old thought forms, cultures, or religions. It's not just women who need to rediscover themselves. It's time for women to fight for men and men to fight for women when fairness and equity do not exist. Why is the man in Paris so broken and lost in pain that he needs drugs and alcohol to quench the pain? Why is his pain so great that he cannot handle abandonment, that he commits such a great criminal act of violence? What is the expectation? That he should be able to act as a man? That he was broken and sick? Yes. That he was devastated and sick by the cultural heritage? Yes. Who raised him? His mother or his father? In this case, as the story tells, he hasn't had the best educators or role models. When his mother's behavior was as described, it says a lot about his respect and thoughts about women. When the mother who raised him has no more respect for another mother, woman, or even another person's life. When his alcoholic father taught him nothing but that he was worth nothing, beating him when the desire arose, then that boy doesn't have the best conditions for a healthy lifestyle, well-being, or other behavior, other than the one he ended up with in Paris, which cost him to be wanted by the police and reported for violence and attempted murder. Why is it that nobody has taught us how we can make use of our emotional intelligence more consciously, so that we can balance and feel ourselves and be able to navigate? I'm trying to point out that it's not only women who are oppressed, but men have been given a role to live up to, which they obviously cannot quite do either. It must also be an oppression of them as human beings, because I don't believe that men are made to be cruel and be rulers who oppress women. But who brings up the men and who brings up the women? Who passes on the unhealthy social, cultural, religious, and family legacies? When we talk about women's oppression, we should remember that some men may be harsh, dominant, and controlling, but who raises them to be so? We women have a great responsibility here and must be conscious of what we ourselves pass on to our children. Men, of course, have the same role and responsibility. So maybe we can take each other by the hand and learn to respect each other as human beings, and do away with the social, cultural, and religious heritage of our ancestors and our past about gender roles and identity. Because it must be really tiring to keep defining ourselves as abusers and abused. We might start by moving towards something called partner and partnership, like plus and minus in a magnet, which are tied to each other in the middle in a partnership. Partner and partnership based on our original signature as an intelligent being. How do we teach each other about the abilities of the opposite poles that each of us contains? Becoming aware that we have a key to the other, as we have our strengths in the opposite poles and know how to develop those abilities, our unique abilities that each gender carries. We all know how all women around the world are abused in the most inhumane way. I've always wondered, why should it be women who take up a fight against this? Is it not just as much the man's responsibility to fight for justice, equality, and to stop these acts? I wonder if that time will come too. Anyway, this was food for thought. Again, it's not a definitive thought form I present here, but I try to show more angles, perspectives, and ways of understanding and comprehending that topic. Goodbye to the old time and the new time with the children. The Pole, 2012. I moved to Jersland after I got full custody of my children. There I completed a large number of court cases. In Jersland, I started a new life deep in a forest in the most magical forest house. I do not think my mother ever understood why I moved there, and she could not really comprehend the fact that the children and I lived there. It wasn't fine enough, but she was there a few times and helped out. You have to think about where my parents come from. I saw my father a few times when he helped me, but he also couldn't contain everything that happened. Gala dresses, money, status, and titles were their world. I, on the other hand, loved my new life to the very core. It was mine, and I had created it out of nothing, alone. She never understood why I left the great life that all girls want and dream of, thinking that I had ruined my life. But I loved my new life, and nothing could get me back. My ex tried to get me back, as a divorce destroys all the facades. I was labelled as many things during that period. Everything from alcoholic to bipolar, and my ex went after my family, friends, workplace, and everywhere he knew I had a chance of survival. All that to make me turn around and come back. We were monitored to such an extent that he would climb the trees to sit and look into the house, which the children discovered several times. So it's a really wild story to write about today. It seems like another life or another person's story, which sounds like sheer madness. I have always thought and am convinced that I never would have ended up there if I were not as wrapped in cotton wool as a girl by my parents in Persia. If I had been given an edge that would have taught me to set boundaries and thus kept them. The edge the boys get in their upbringing. I come from a very fine family in Persia, both on my mother's and father's side. And everything that happened to them and me wasn't in the family's DNA. In our family, we do not get divorced. But the wild cultural difference created the inner dilemma and destroyed the inner compass, which at least I had. I couldn't separate so well anymore, at least not until I was in my late 20s. You have no idea what people who move their roots to another nationality go through life with. I still, to this day, cannot come back to Persia, as my ex wouldn't sign the divorce papers, and in Persia they won't issue a divorce decree unless he signs. So today I am one of the Danish Persians who is married to a Danish man in Persia's paper system, and married for the second time to a Danish man in the Danish system. And yes, I am, of course, officially divorced from my first husband here in Denmark. But nothing and nobody should stop me from living my life. No one has that right. As a human being and a woman, I have the right to be unfaithful, get divorced if I want, get married again and again if I want, work with what I want to, and do what I want with my body. And no, in the case that women have to stay at home, so that men can realize their dream with jobs and earn the money they have set themselves up for, it doesn't give them the right to believe that they own everything and the people, especially when it's agreed that the woman stays at home, or if there are no other possibilities, one of them never being present. It's far from okay, because the human value we women give to our children, our families, and our relationships cannot be weighed and measured with money, especially not when you are married to someone who is never at home, because he is out in the world at work and is the guest of the week or the month. So yes, there'll be a lot of divorces and conflicts that are sky high, as we all think we own everything, including our partner. Our generation has a learning in step with the consciousness development that is taking place with women's rights and emancipation. Both parties really need a system update and to understand the task of giving everything and everyone time off when the roads part. Therefore, it's called a divorce. For example, we women who believe that we can continue to cultivate our dynamics and freedom to do what we please in relation to the children and our exes, and want to keep all the relationships as they were when we were married after we got divorced. The problem only comes when our exes meet other partners or simply want to move on with their freedom, which only creates chaos. Chaos for both our former husbands and our current children, when they have to interact in another family system, which another woman and our former co-partner are to create, and which we are not the ones to create. And men who first have to learn to be independent privately in family systems that the ex has mastered. Both think, feel, be present mentally, take care of the children, the new partner, bonus children, etc. Men who have been far too busy to live up to the old male role as a business person who works overtime and can no longer navigate. They cannot be the great strong man for two families, and they want their freedom alone. But where do they find their identity's new role descriptions and script? They may be divorced because they want something different for them and their children, and this creates chaos for the ex, who has been the helmsman in the children's department and refuses to stop managing. The two role descriptions may actually also be reversed, but they were just a few examples. The children here are the biggest victims. Sometimes one of the parents has to let go of his children, his essence, in order to give them the best and healthiest living conditions for well-being and survival. Or one of the parents has to lose everything to fight for the children's freedom from unhealthy relationships, and is subsequently left alone with them. Not forgetting the grandparents or friends who cannot keep up with what they can or cannot do anymore. In other words, a complexity that requires completely different abilities to develop and navigate. The challenge is that not many can help us. The pedagogical and psychological knowledge isn't up to date, and tools are not enough for navigating madness, which is a new issue. The word cooperation and the best interests of children are indiscriminately misused in all cases that end up in the family courthouse. Cooperation courses that do more harm than good. A world that really needs help as we face an era shift of gender identity. And some of the agreements, resolutions, cooperation courses or agreements force one of the parties out of the ring in their struggle for equality and their freedom. This will ultimately have an impact on the children if an agreement that helps to cultivate this kind of dissatisfaction and disapproval of one of the adults forces this thought form of cultural inequality onto the children in the form of good cooperation. Cooperation which actually means denying the rights of an adult human being. We focus so much on the facade and giving the children the security they need that we forget that we are giving them in the form of an inauthentic, superficial image of good cooperation, where they can see the unbalanced and lopsided distribution of roles behind the facade. We teach children that it is okay to put up with, to be in, or just live with dissatisfaction, and to pretend that everything is okay. It's as if the children are stupid and cannot read their surroundings and their parents. I am no less intelligent than men, as has been shown time and again in my life. The fact is that I have probably been more intelligent than any of the men I've had as a partner. And that has put me in the wildest life situations because they couldn't handle it and didn't have a program for it. I've never been willing to let go of my freedom as a human being, and it has cost me to be on the run, near death, etc. I am living proof of an era shift, and with this attitude, I went on from the wild story and had to go underground for a time, until my children were old enough to navigate. Duursland is officially my soul place. The people who were around us are, to date, the loveliest and some of the wisest people I have experienced. When we arrived in Duursland, I had 50 cents in my pocket and $1 million debt. Even the children hadn't brought their personal items, so we built beds out of milk crates and were mega creative. We got a very beautiful home soon after, and I quickly turned our situation around. But I shall never forget the loving and heartwarming welcome we received when we arrived. The unity that exists in Duursland is the least judgmental and most loving unity I have ever experienced. We were unpacking our things when suddenly there was a man standing in the doorway. He handed me a bag of food and introduced himself with a welcome speech, telling us to just call if we needed help. I was absolutely flabbergasted. He had heard my story and wanted to contribute this. The friendliness didn't stop there. We participated in so many cool and very different experiences that awakened another side of life in us during our time in the dense forest of Duursland. The owners of the house helped us, looked after us, and I am eternally grateful to them. So, a big thanks to those of you who helped to bring me here, and thank you for still being a part of my life. On my birthday, I got up to the fact that someone had written congratulations with pieces of firewood at my front door. It was my sweet neighbor who lived across the road. At first, I got scared, as I thought it was one of those psychological games my ex was playing. I wasn't completely acclimatized from the time I had left behind, with the grueling 2.5 years, the 25 lawsuits, and the loss of all my personal belongings, whether it was paper, household goods, or money. I had moved to a women's shelter just before the last trials ended, and then I almost fled to Duursland at a secret address. So my first thought was immediately, it's my ex. So there was a task for me to get back to life with balance and to find confidence again. I was followed. The car tires of my boyfriends or dates were cut open for years to come. He had found us. He had bribed someone from the public system and had gotten my address. And yes, he could do things that others cannot, and everyone else thinks is impossible in today's Denmark. Just like he could find a print of my boarding pass if I was traveling. During the 2.5 years of the divorce, he broke into my house, stole money, my personal items, like my hat. One day, he also broke into the house and physically abducted my son. He ended up being sentenced, and he had to serve a sentence. It was great for me that I actually dared hold the limit and finally go up against him, face my anxiety. When you have been on a walk through the hands of death and come back to life again, there are not many things you are afraid of anymore. But my children, that something should happen to them was and is the anxiety of my life. I wasn't afraid of him for my sake or because I was afraid of what he would do to me, because I am going to die one day. But no one touches my children. There are no limits to what I would do for them. What high-ranking academic who is responsible for people's lives in his profession on a daily basis settles into this kind of madness and patterns of behavior? It's still a mystery to me how he ended up there as a well-educated Dane. And yes, several times in our relationship I ended up in the hospital because, as always, I fought for my right and freedom. One time I lost my memory and he told me and the doctors that I had fallen down the stairs. So, yes, I fought for my freedom until the very last day we were together. And it had a price I will gladly and at all times pay. I would not bow down without my human rights, cost whatever it would. I also couldn't hide my intelligence and play stupid all the time. It doesn't actually take much intelligence to see what happens. The story seems foreign today, like a different reality when I write about it, as if I were not present or were non-existent. Totally unrealistic that it should happen to me. Just strange is probably the right word. Today, I am very happy and grateful that because of his work, he was always the guest of the month while we were together, and that the children were raised by me. Happy that I stayed at home and was the one who was there for them, taught them, and gave them the freedom to think, feel, and dare to speak up. Life went on, and I reset with a lot of books, courses, therapists, and looked forward wildly to life that I was finally free, could do anything. In any case, I and the children drew a vision board where we wrote, among other things, that we would like to live in a forest. We have lived in many places in the world and experienced a lot. We came from a big house and a luxurious life. I wanted so much to teach them a little about the other side of life, nature and the humbleness of being something else. We got our forest house. The Pearl, it was named. And there we lived for almost 6 years, where I had the reset of my life in me and around me. The Pearl gave us peace, love, and enveloped us with its amazing energies. And it became a magical time we shall never forget. The Pearl gave us a beautiful relationship with its owner, who today is part of our small family. We healed in the tranquility that the forest gave us, enjoyed each other and life after a long period of chaos. Life completely turned for me there, and the wisdom-making peace I got back there I have carried with me to this day. The Pearl looked after us for about 6 years, before we came back to Aarhus at 100 kilometers an hour and had returned to the volume that we all live with and under. Our small idyllic forest house could only be heated with firewood, and the owner had built it himself. The gravel road to the house and the view of the horses and the forest were the only things you could enjoy when you drove to the house. The house contained an inexplicable energy. It was alive and was in symbiosis with the three of us. We stacked 20 to 30 tons of firewood together every year, made our own vegetable garden, went for long walks at the beach and in the forests around us. We cooked delicious food together every day. Even a young boy of 9 made delicious 3-course gourmet food. We held family parties and bonfires with music and outdoor activities. It was all part of our everyday life. The children and I made something cozy almost every day and enjoyed the life that we had gotten back again. The Pearl became the place where I started recording everything you read about. The theory, the hypotheses, the laws, which ultimately, after several years, ended up with the algorithm. I had to put my dental hygienist education on the shelf due to injuries in my neck and head, but I have to do something else anyway. I had to find a way to get myself physically up. This led to the training as a craniosacral therapist. In this process, I solved all my physical challenges and the great pain I had in my neck. But what was I going to do with my life, with all the experience? What was I going to do with the brand new chance the children and I had been given? How can I be my whole self? To start something for me, as me. Who am I? What can I do? Why can I? And how can I? How do I always end up finding the wild solutions and a happy feeling of success? During the following years until today, we've had a normal and quiet life. What we call normal for us is a life with speed, development, peace, travels, a lot of challenges to find solutions to, experiences, entrepreneurship, passion, business, Camino, and lots of love with peace. One summer day, I woke up in the middle of the day and went straight to our dining table, which was downstairs on the ground floor. I woke up, or rather came back, from a very vivid and real dream. I could feel the energy running through my body. I felt my body and was lifted 0.5 meter above the bed. The only thing I thought was, what is going on? What if someone came up to the room and saw me floating? What was it that had washed through me like a huge wave which I could feel? What happened was at the cellular level throughout my body. My brain was as if it opened widely and a lot had to get out. Or rather, a lot of information began to come down. Everything from codes, numbers, fonts, calculations with a lot of illustrations, with ideas pouring down. What on earth was I going to do with alpha, beta, and sine, which came down to me? It all started with me dreaming that I had fallen into the water, and all of a sudden I was half awake, without being asleep or fully awake, in a conscious state, in the unconscious. I was wrapped in gold at the end, and suddenly I was back on my bed. Whether it was a dream or something else inexplicable that happened to me on a higher energy plane, I've always tried to not go into or name or define. It was for me a very special experience that I shall never be able to explain to others, for others can only relate to experiences they themselves know. Finally, it doesn't matter to me what others think it was. I know that I experienced something that changed me and my level of intelligence and consciousness for the rest of my life. If it was a dream, which many would say, well, then I hope that one day you dream and experience the same kind of dream. I could see, hear, feel everything around me on a completely different level from that day. It's a day I shall never forget, and it pushed me over the ramp with my first quantum leap. I found myself awake in front of the dining room table with my daughter's drawing stuff. I had to use a ruler, a level, and all sorts of calculations and mathematical equations were running around in my head. I started drawing and writing. I needed help. I called the soul doctor and told her everything. She was quiet for a long time. I asked her if she could help me and be my mentor. She asked for time to think about it. A few weeks later, we started our journey together, which lasted until I met my current husband, and when she left this world. A journey like no other together with the wisest person I've ever known. From that day on, I started my journey through a world for which I still have no explanation. There were abilities I didn't know I had, and which had come to life. I wrote and drew and wrote and drew, and it has lasted until today. I write and draw, see, think and hear, both linear and circular on many levels. My big doubts about what, why and how make me be here, where I still don't believe in man-made faith or spirituality with prophets and angels. But I believe in the universe as an intelligent format, a collective intelligence and energies. I believe in us as organisms that are part of nature in our own very intelligent consciousness matrix. It is not because I haven't been through science or deep into the spiritual world and have not cultivated those worlds. For that I very much have. Therefore, I know that we humans do not know much yet, as we are not using all our capacities or all of us yet. I believe in diversities where men and women, spiritual society and science, day and night, and the whole world of dualities emanate from, and are based on. I believe that we must learn to bridge differences, learn to unite within them, integrate the poles, and find ways to develop our abilities and phase out without creating chaos. We must learn to assess without judging. We must learn and remember to use both our forms of intelligences and laws of consciousness. Combined consciousness ability and sustained consciousness ability, which help us to form a wholeness and to a consciousness, namely our EQ and IQ. I believe that we are energy and that everything is energy around us. From nothing to the entrepreneur to the CEO. The entrepreneur and yet another learning that led to the director and a time to try it all out. After 2012, I got into mentoring, got a business coach, took courses, my craniosacral education, and a mini MBA. In 2015, I took some of what I was writing and researching and turned it into a concept without taking it all in. I knew that the market wasn't ready for it, so it suited me fine to take some of it away. I wasn't ready either, and still more in doubt than in faith. I clearly remember the time when I talked about the sustainable management or the sustainable human being, and everyone else said, "What? It's not called that. That's not correct Danish." So we were a bit far from everything we are today in the leadership and entrepreneurship world. Much has changed for the better. Mega cool. I've always been enriched by many good people around me, and those people have been people I have known and not known, and who have helped me. Otherwise, I would not have come through the wild years from 2010 to 2012, or the years that followed. People around me who helped and believed in me. They also helped me realize my dream, and helped me get started as an entrepreneur back then. One friend came with the money. The other one founded a private limited company in her name, so I get started trying out the beta product. What is the probability of that? So here is also a loving thank you to my two beautiful and faithful girlfriends and soul sisters. This book is also written in honor of what the three of us have together. Here, I also sent my deepest, heartfelt thank you to Duursland Municipality's employees who helped me so much on my way that I can hardly comprehend and understand this today. The people who helped me didn't know me, but they trusted me, they believed in me. They gave me the opportunity and the faith to regain my dignity and place in life again. They were one of the fundamental reasons why I had the way open in front of me. I am forever grateful to you, and it touches me deep inside to write this today. You are proof that when everything looks black, people come to help you. Someone whom we in our wildest imagination hadn't thought. You are definitely one of the reasons why the book and Ancient Academy have become reality. I learned everything about digitalization, concept development, the owner-leader format, structuring, financial management, budgets, strategy, board work, development and liquidation, etc. Everything that comes with the business world and for an entrepreneur and leader. Like every other entrepreneur story you've heard, then, just before I had my success, just before the decisive moment, my body turned off, and I became seriously ill with an autoimmune disease. What I thought I had under control, I didn't have control of. I had not taken good care of myself, again. Being a single mother is one thing. Being a single mother, a theorist, and researching the depths I did, and thus creating as I did, is another thing. Having to be an entrepreneur on top of that was something quite different. I remember that I was commissioned to give lectures with a good salary, but had to cancel and pull the plug. As if that wasn't enough, both children were teenagers during that period and reacted to the 2 hard years they'd been through in their childhood. It was great when they could put things in place for themselves, but probably the hardest period I remember to date, when I had to let go of them and let them find their way. There, I really had to face my anxiety regarding the children. It was an indescribably painful process, but so healthy for all of us. That process pulled up everything old, and we once again had to put everything back in place, but this time in different roles and separately. Purging periods in life are, for me, the hardest periods. I was through 4 different cancer packages, and no one found out what was wrong with me, but I knew that. It was my body's reaction to years of overwork. Like everything else, I believe in the best, when one door closes, as everyone says. Now, I had the opportunity to finish the theory, everything else, and the rest of the puzzle, and give my body peace to get back on top again. Every minute in bed was spent geeking out, and the children, my lovely friends, helped out. During that period, we moved halfway to Aarhus. It was clear that this was a new start and a quantum leap. I had felt it for a long time, but I didn't know when the timing was. A smoke injury in the Pearl pushed me out of the woods for a short stop halfway to Aarhus. An era ended there, and a new one started. In 2017, I was hired as a consultant, which later became a full-time CEO position. My condition was that we could try all things that I worked with in the company. Back then, years ago, when I decided to take a mini MBA, It was one of my life's biggest confirmations. I got the highest marks on modules that I had done without having read it all. It was something I just could. I felt being back in my little bubble that I knew. Management was part of my backbone. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to hand everything that I did in my life. It was a gift and a realization I needed to further develop it all. Being a natural leader is something quite special. I had been a CEO for another owner-manager business many years ago, but now it came back again. It turned out that the owner needed to restructure the company and thus to stop as the owner-manager himself. I partly knew what I was saying yes to, but restructuring a company that had broken its neck during the growth process and keep people moving on, everything made it all another new learning. In the ensuing investment round, I was thrown around and we tried our best to find stakeholders. We ended up with 2 investors, both being old businessmen who needed a cozy project. One of them was a man I met on Tinder. He had heard about what I was doing and that we were looking for a new owner. On our second date, he drops the bomb. What would you say if I bought the company and you joined for 2 years? Then you can move on if you don't feel like continuing. I spoke to the owner and we chose to go ahead with my date as he outbid all the others. After 8 months, my date became my current husband.